Yobachi 2007 back at you with another one. We're going to look at this article from CNN, and this is one that is about one of the main issues that we talk about a lot here on this side of the interwebs regarding man-centered content. The name of this video is "Why the Rate of Single Men in the U.S. Looking for Dates Has Declined." It's talked about in this part of YouTube a lot in regards to women's dating habits and how women are able to date older young women are able to date older men, how they largely circle around men of certain incomes, and most men are left out. And most young men these days are often left uh, alone and left to their own devices because average women don't believe that they only deserve average men. Even homely looking women think they deserve 6 foot tall men making six figures. And so let's listen to a little bit of this and then we'll begin to comment interspliced through the video.
I delved here into recent data from the CDC suggesting major problems with regard to the mental health of our adolescents, surges in depression and suicidal ideation, especially true for our girls. This week, I found cause to worry about young men. This headline from The Hill, it caught my eye. Most young men are single. Most young women are not. The story.
Before we get into that, though, please take a moment to subscribe and like this video. Help move me through the algorithm. Definitely hit up that like for me, and we're going to get right back to the program. So we heard him say most young men are single, but most young women are not. He's going to give some reasons. Let me let him go through that, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
The story reported that as of 2022, Pew Research Center found 30% of U.S. adults are neither married, living with a partner, nor engaged in a committed relationship. Nearly half of all young adults are single. Now, look at these numbers. 34% of women, twice as many, a whopping 63% of men. What explains that? I pulled the Pew study and I read with interest. Turns out since 2019, the share of single men who say they're looking for dates or a relationship has declined from 61% to 50%. In 2018, 28% of men ages 18 to 30 reported they'd had no sex in the past year, compared with 18% of women of that age. The Hill report said men in their 20s are more likely than women in their 20s to be romantically uninvolved, sexually dormant, friendless, and lonely. They stand at the vanguard of an epidemic of declining marriage, sexuality, and relationships that afflicts all of young America. Among the causes, among the factors, a reliance on social media and online porn. But also, more young women are hooking up with each other or dating and marrying slightly older men, and heterosexual women are getting more choosy. Other troubling statistics about men come from.
So he hits on some relevant factors, but he overplays certain ones and downplays or doesn't even bring up others. Uh, yeah, the reliance on online porn or things of that nature, that's not a reliance as much as that is a reflection of otherwise scarcity and deprivation that is not available to those men. Furthermore, uh, it's not a determination, a decision that men have made to simply rely on online dating or that so many women are turning lesbian. It's not as if there's so many more women who are gay than are men for that to cause any of this disparity. Certainly not at almost double the rate. That's not even close to that. Women are homosexual almost at the same rates as men are, so that would not leave a disparity at all. What the drivers are that again women are choosing where in the past they would have typically come out of high school and would have paired up with a male either right out of high school as well or 2 to 3 to 4 years older, or maybe they waited after college and the same thing, they met someone in college, or they dated a man who is in his late 20s while she's in her early to mid 20s, and men were able to couple up. Now women are criteria are solely based almost on elite attractiveness, as we've seen with the surveys on Tinder, where 20% of men get 80% of the attention from women on apps like that, and then where we see constantly women's determination that they deserve by just their breathing air and having a vagina, that they deserve a man who makes a certain level of money, that they deserve six-figure men, or they're broke, barely making 20, $30,000 a year, and they deserve at least a 60, 70, $80,000 man. What that leaves men with or women with are not very many options because most men don't make that kind of money. The average male, regardless of race, across the board, makes about $51,000 a year. All right, and what we have is most women are dating the same men. Many men, the reason why there are so many more single women, single men than there are women, is because a smaller percentage of men are dating multiple women. And we can see this over and over again with the stats on pregnancy, on single motherhood, and seeing that people are shocked when we tell you that, for instance, black men, nearly half are single and childless, while you see the percentage of black women who have children are at much higher rates. Well, why? Because it's the same handful of 20% of men who are getting most of the women pregnant. That's why you have these guys with four or five different baby mamas and six, seven, eight kids. Yeah. So the number of women who are single aren't as many of them as single because they're in a quote committed relationship, but that guy's in a committed relationship with two of you, whether you know it or not. Some of them do know it and some of them don't. So when the surveys go out to find out how many of the women are single and how many of the men are single, it's way fewer women reporting being single because they're dating the same men. And a lot of them don't like to acknowledge that. And this report doesn't acknowledge that, even though it gets into a number of factors. Let's listen a little bit more.
Other troubling statistics about men come from a 2021 study from the Survey Center for American Life. They found the share of men who have 6 or more close friends, which in 1990 was 55%, by 2021 had shrunk by half. Meanwhile, those with literally 0 close friends, which stood at 3% in 1990, has zoomed to 15%. An expert quoted by The Hill said this disconnect can have catastrophic consequences for young men. Quote, in the worst case scenario, the young American man's social disconnect can have tragic consequences. Young men commit suicide at 4 times the rate of young women. Younger women are largely responsible for rising rates of mass shootings, a trend that some researchers link to their growing social isolation. Well, those words reminded me of a conversation that I had over a year ago right here on CNN with NYU professor Scott Galloway.
Treating veterans with...
All right, he's going to validate a lot of what I said about women's current modern dating trends, their desire for only elite looks and elite finances. And we're going to go back to that. But before we do, I just even want to encourage you guys to understand, to men to understand, that you don't have to settle for only what women will offer here in America. If you have decent financial stability and you can learn how you can travel, you should take advantage of becoming a part of the Passport Bros movement. And I can tell you that this movement is really taking hold online just by the fact of this video here that has garnered about 1,000 views just in the last week. And this video has been out here for a while. It was doing well already by the standards of my channel, certainly. But just in the last few days, even the last 4 or 5 days, I believe, it's jumped about 1,000 views. I'm getting a couple of hundred a day. And because a lot of people, a lot of men are understanding what's going on out here, and they're not resigning themselves to be left to whatever modern women want to relegate them to. And neither should you. And you should take a look and begin to gain some understanding. Maybe even watch some of these videos and learn from some of these other guys who are out here doing their thing, that you don't have to settle for the lackluster options that are available here in the West. So let's listen to the professor and see what he has for us.
But the issue is, when you have a group of men, the lower half of attractiveness of men in online dating, which has doubled, now it's about half of relationships, and the top 20% of men in terms of attractiveness get about 60% of the interest, you end up with a group of men that are more prone to conspiracy theory, more prone to misogynistic content, more prone to not believe in climate change. So this is The American story, if it's written with a pen whose ink is failing young men, does not end well. This is an existential crisis, failing young men.
As always, Professor Galloway was prescient. Back with me now is Scott Galloway. He's a professor of marketing at NYU Stern School of Business. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's the host of the Professor G podcast and author of multiple best-selling books, most recently, Adrift, America.
First off, Michael, I just want to say thank you for raising this issue a year. Natural order of things. For the majority of history, a small percentage of men have had the majority of the mating opportunities. But in America, we decided to make a huge investment in what would probably be the greatest innovation in history, and that is in the middle class. From 1945 to 1947, 7 million men returned from war, were discharged from the service, and we decided to give them the GI Bill, subsidized mortgages. We saw education rates go from 5 to 45%. They were valued, and we had such a strong manufacturing base that you had massive marriage and household formation. And some men were seen as more economically and emotionally viable.
So he also brings up some good extra additional points here. Society used to invest in men. Now society has divested in men as we have moved to a gynocentrist society that not only just favors women, but does backflips to benefit women at the dismay of men, that specifically and directly, intentionally also limits men to favor females' progress. But what female progress, so to speak, has done, which is really not progress, it's really the deconstruction of normal society, which is men lead households. And when men are valuable members of society, they get married. He talked about household formation. They get married, they work hard to support their family and their kids, and they are more law abiding citizens who have a stake in the society. When men are told they're not needed, you have no place and purpose, you're not even desired to be a father, you're desired to sire children, but the woman is both mother and father, you're unneeded in the household, go away. Then what are they supposed to go away and do except go out and engage in antisocial activity and do what appeals to men's lower base desires, which is engaging in violence, engaging in tribalism, engaging in kind of male bravado that proves yourself, because that's the only thing you have now to do to prove yourself as a man, to make yourself a purpose, because you have no purpose in being a leader of a household, in working hard to support a family, in supporting wife and children, and to be an upstanding citizen who drives kids to soccer games on the weekend. No, you're not even wanted. Don't come around. So what I'm saying to men, though, is you don't have to be a victim of this. You don't have to be at the precipice of this existential crisis, as he said. You don't have to let yourself be at the behest of whether society wants to invest in you or whether these average women think you're good enough. No matter what they think is, regardless of what they think, you get to make decisions about you. And you should, first of all, be working to be the best you that you can be, working on yourself, building yourself up, staying in your masculine frame, and building yourself up to be the best man that you can be, to acquire the best opportunities for yourself. And one of those opportunities for yourself, if you're making even a $60,000 a year, maybe even less, if you're saving your money, if you're not blowing money on a bunch of foolishness, not blowing money, taking women out on these foodie dates, paying their bills, being a sucker, then you would have money to take trips down to Mexico, take trips to Bolivia or other South American countries, even over to Africa if you want to stick with the sisters, or to some of the Caribbean countries, not Jamaica, other Caribbean countries where the women are still traditional and follow men and don't have a bad attitude and aren't trying to fight and run over men. You have the option to seek family elsewhere with women who want family, not to be at the behest of these forces in society. So, what do you guys think? Hit me down below. Tell me what you think about all this, and which way are you going in life? If you're already married, is it working out for you? Is that going well? And if not, are you going to sit around here and let women these untraditional modern women with 2 or 3 kids demanding your money while they're talking about they're strong and independent? Are you going to let them dictate life to you, or are you going to take the reins into your own hands? Like, subscribe, hit the bell so you can get notifications for more videos, and we'll get back at you with the next one. Yobachi 2007. I'm out.